This episode of Nerdist News is sponsored by Borderlands 3. HBO's Game of Thrones is getting another prequel. Game of Thrones' 8-season run came to an end this year, and it's no joke to say that the finale of the show left fans more divided than Ned Stark's body from his head. However, Daenerys' corpse wasn't even cold, spoilers, before we heard news that HBO had already been combing through the rich lore of George R.R. Martin's Westeros to make not just one, but multiple spin-off series. According to reports, there were 5 ideas being pitched to HBO, and while one had officially died, another one, starring Naomi Watts, got the green light, based on the so-called Long Night, the first invasion of the White Walkers into Westeros thousands of years before the events of Game of Thrones. Actually shot a pilot earlier this summer. And now it appears that yet another one of these Game of Thrones spin-offs is coming closer to becoming a reality. What could it be about? Let's break it down right now. Thanks to a report from the folks over at Deadline, HBO is nearing a pilot order for a Game of Thrones spin-off / prequel based on George R.R. Martin's book, Fire and Blood. So prepare for dragons and incest. Am I wrong? Now, if that phrase sounds familiar, that's because it's a house motto for the Targaryen family. And people speaking about Daenerys Targaryen reference them, especially in season 8 when she was burninating the countryside. As we mentioned, Fire and Blood is also the title of George R.R. Martin's latest book, which tells the history of the Targaryen family from the time of Aegon the Conqueror, 300 years before the events of A Game of Thrones, all the way through the Dance of the Dragons, the Targaryen civil war that took place 150 years after Aegon's reign. And that's not to be confused with his novel A Dance with Dragons. George, stop making everything sound so similar. So what does the vast timeline this book covers mean for this new Game of Thrones series? Well, for one, it means that the platinum wig budget for the show is gonna be insane. But seriously, there are 2 options for how this series could go down. One is outlined over on Nerdist.com. The show could be more of an anthology series, with each season of the spin-off covering a different generation of Targaryens navigating the politics and plots of Westeros. And this could all start with Aegon and his 2 sisters riding their 3 dragons to conquer Westeros. That sounds familiar. 2, another option for the series that is rumored is that this Fire and Blood prequel could focus on the aforementioned Dance of the Dragons Targaryen civil war that pitted sibling against sibling and generation against generation, which, was hard for the Targaryens because you know how close of a family they are. Oh Lord. Well, the Dance of Dragons was a tumultuous time for the Seven Kingdoms, with many saying that it was this period of conflict that sent the Targaryen dynasty into decline and eventually allowed them to be overthrown in Robert's Rebellion. Of course, the detailed history and lore of the conflict is too much to get into here, which is probably why they want to do a whole show on it, but suffice it to say, it's got all the scheming and fighting and backstabbing that Game of Thrones fans have come to love. But will it be enough to get fans back on board for the fantasy franchise? Most diehards are still very hurt and upset over the last couple seasons of the main show, and with HBO doubling down with 2 prequel series, will fans return to the franchise to watch these new offerings, or stay away in order to not be hurt again? All in all, there are a lot of possibilities for a show based on Fire and Blood. We'll just have to wait for more information about whether this project goes further and see if it resonates with the fans. But what do you folks think? Are you ready for a Targaryen Game of Thrones prequel? Do you think the show's lit, or do you got Game of Thrones burnout? All right, I'm done. Well, do you think we could get multiple Game of Thrones series at once, or will HBO just pick one show out of the bunch to move forward with? And what other eras of Westerosi history would you like to see tackled in a Game of Thrones spinoff? Let's discuss. Thanks again to Borderlands 3 for sponsoring today's episode. The original shooter looter is back and bigger than ever, with 4 all-new Vault Hunters and over 1 billion guns. It's time to lock, load, and loot. Pick up your copy on Xbox One, PS4, or PC now. Let's make some mayhem. Rated M for mature.